I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have roll call, please.
Councilmember Wallers?
Yes.
Saldi?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Gullikson?
Yes.
Mayor Gay?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to add under other business, item A, letter of support for Stevens County Child Care. And that letter should be at your place.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Citizen comments. Anyone would like to speak to the council? Now's a good time. Okay, we have no public hearings. We have reading and approval of minutes from August 24th regular meeting.
I will move approval of the regular minutes from the August 24 meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion or comments on any of the minutes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And we have the same August 24th condensed version.
I'll move approval of the condensed version of the minutes from 8/24.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And I will move approval of the consent agenda, which consists of audit of city bills, the August transit report, gambling reports, 2 of them from the hockey and 1 from Eagles, the May 12th and July 14th library board minutes, and the July 21st tree board minutes.
I'll second.
And any discussion or questions on any of the items?
Nice to see the transit count going up. It was about over
Yeah.
1,000.
Finally went by
1,000
last
more.
year.
Yeah, nice to see.
Anything else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Petitions, requests, and communications? None. And ordinances and resolutions? We have a resolution accepting a bid for 2021 6th Street Improvement Project.
Yeah, this is the railroad crossing project over on 6th Street. We had 2 bids, one from Riley Brothers Construction for $125,062.50, and the other was Central Specialties from Alexandria, $205,948. One of the interesting things that happened was we got another COVID grant that actually we have the money in hand on this. And it was a special pot of money that came out. What was the acronym on this? Special pot of money that came out that we were allowed to use it for a number of different things, and one of them was street improvements. And so the suggestion was made that we use this on the project over there, and it was $11,125. And so then I let Jeff Kuhn know that it was really kind of interesting because we literally just had to give a response and an email back to where it came from as to where we wanted to use it, and that was the thumbs up. And Whitney and I talked about this, that we have to remember that. I think there's a report that has to go in on this. I'm sure they'll let us know on it, but that helped reduce down the cost of this project. So the recommendation is to go ahead and accept the bid and award a contract to Riley Brothers.
That will be done yet this fall?
We're not quite sure if it will be.
Or just before the railroad does any of their?
They're working with the railroad on it, you know, to make sure that they get it done. I know one of the big issues is when they do this work, there's gonna be probably a week worth of flagging because of the trains that come through. But I think the goal is to get it done this fall, and if it doesn't work out, then it'll wind up being done next spring. We're kind of at the will of the railroad.
Yeah.
So is this gonna be, from, like, from the alley behind, the old drugstore to?
Yeah, so what's
Pacific,
gonna
or-
happen is we're gonna put curb and gutter on the south side of Sixth Street, on the east side of or west side of the railroad tracks. And then the exit out of the parking lot behind the old drugstore building and the parking entrance into the parking lot, behind McGinnis, they'll be redone. So they match up better with the railroad crossing, and then there's gonna be a sidewalk that's gonna be placed along the north side of the crossing arm on the railroad, you know, and that's the biggest issue. That's the whole thing that the railroad said is if we're gonna keep that road, because you know they came and asked if we would take out Sixth Street. If we're gonna keep that road, then we have to be able to make that safer for the railroad crossing. And putting a sidewalk on the north side of the crossing arm was the way to do that. So that's what's all gonna be involved. So it'll be redoing some of the parking lot exit and entrance and then putting curb and gutter.
And then the railroad will redo that.
The
crossing.
railroad will do their crossing then.
I get it.
I
Oh.
imagine it might be still kind of a bumpy ride for somebody in a wheelchair. I mean, as far as handicapped accessible going across the tracks, but,
Well, it's railroad.
I mean, that's just, what do you do?
Don't you have a sidewalk, or?
Yeah,
I guess you'll still have that
well,
bump.
they'll, yeah, I think it's no different than Seventh Street or Fifth Street
Right,
when you have sidewalks that go across.
okay,
They sure get beat up,
yeah.
those crossings. I'll move approval of the resolution accepting a bid for the 2021 Sixth Street Improvement Project.
I will second.
Any further discussion on the resolution? We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Wallers,
Yes,
Salvi,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Heath.
Yes. And we have a resolution approving an urban forest management plan for the city of Morris.
Yeah, and so there's actually two major pieces of information that really are coming out of the tree board, and that's what they're tasked to do, is to look at trees and make recommendations back to the city on trees. The first one is this urban forest management plan, and actually Sue Granger's here. I see Jay came in, and I'm gonna have her come up and just explain this a little bit. And the second piece of information that's gonna be coming is an update to the tree ordinance that the city has, and I mentioned in the memo that probably that'll come in October. We're looking that over, and sometimes we do a maintenance ordinance where we pick up a couple things that need to be changed. In this case, it might be just a full replacement of the tree ordinance with the changes that are being made. But the first major piece is this urban management, forest management plan. So if you want to come up to the mic, Sue, and you can just give them a heads up on what you're doing in here.
Okay. Talked in front of a mic for a long time. So the tree board was created in '97, and there's a part of the city code that established it. And it lists the duties and responsibilities of the tree board, and the first thing says to study, investigate, counsel, develop, and administer a written plan for the care, preservation, pruning, planting, etc. of trees and shrubs in parks, streets, along streets, and in other public areas. The plan shall be presented to the council, and following review and approval by the council shall constitute the official tree plan of the city. So that's what we're finally doing after the tree board's been in existence for a long time. And then, as Blaine explained, coupled with that, he asked us to go over the city code, and basically we searched for everything that had to do with trees and just went through it and are recommending some updates if that seems like the thing to do. So he got our recommendations for that. The tree board, as you know, Kim is our city council representative, and Jim Detbiner is the city forester, so he's at our meetings also. this management plan, we are also working on an emerald ash borer preparedness plan, but we're just starting that, and that should be done, I think, maybe I'm hoping by Christmas, but it'll be a few pages also that would sort of go along with this. This plan, we looked at a lot of other cities to help advise us on this. It took us about 2 years, I think at least 2 years, to work on this slowly over our meetings. And what it does is applies to just the public trees. So it's the trees that the city actually has control over, which is about 25%, we estimate, of the trees in Morris. But it also, part of it is to just influence the private trees too, which is 75% of the trees. So we have some things in here about communicating and educating the public too, because that's the majority of the trees in the community. And the first couple pages are just talking about the benefits of trees and how they really are infrastructure, just like parks and curbs and streets. And there is more and more research all the time about the benefits of trees, including a huge thing is conserving energy, lowers everybody's utility bills when there are trees. And I've talked about that with you before. Even in the winter, they bring heating bills down. Then the second page is more benefits of trees. And one that we didn't put in here is that, I don't think we put in here that the departments of transportation have done research that traffic goes slower along tree-lined streets. So if you have streets lined with trees, it brings the traffic down there safer for everybody. Another big thing is the social aspects of it. Our neighborhoods are a lot more livable and neighborly if we have trees, which kind of separate me from my neighbor, give you a little bit of visual screening, a little bit of privacy, and they just make everybody happier. And there's research on all kinds of things about trees, from mental health, etc. But anyway, the majority of this, then, 6 pages are going through our plan, and it's really kind of a aspirational, big picture goal plan. So we have 3 big goals, and then each one has 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 strategies to meet the goals, and then we have what we call action items, and they're just bullet points, the very specific things. So the bigger goals are more aspirational, and there are 3. The city of Morris sheltered by maximum tree canopy. Number 2 is that that canopy be healthy and resilient, which makes sense. You want it to be, thriving and, resilient to storm and disease, insects, etc. And then the third big goal is having a citizenry that is knowledgeable about and supportive of the urban forest and the city's efforts. So those are the 3 big goals. The strategies then for the maximum tree canopy, preserve the community's large trees. This is really important because the large trees have the greatest impact on the canopy. And you can think about that for a minute, it makes sense. It takes a heck of a lot of little trees to make the amount of canopy that you have in a great big tree. And the environmental and other benefits really increase the bigger the trees. The bigger the trees, the bigger the benefits. So we have several action items to help preserve the community's largest trees. Strategy B, remove trees only when necessary. This is also pretty common sense. The most cost-effective way to keep our canopy is to not remove trees. Again, it takes a long time to replant them. That's the horror of the emerald ash borer coming with 40% of our, I think it's 40% of our canopy is ash. So when you think about that, when that thing comes, it's just going to be really tough. It takes a lot of little trees to make up for a big tree. So another strategy, increase the number of trees being planted. Strategy D, so I'm at the bottom of page 4, is preserve what we're getting at here is preserve the natural edges of things. So it's not just the trees on the boulevards, along the streets, and in parks, but we're getting at here to also preserve just bits and pieces along the edges of things, the railroad right of way, etc. All those trees contribute to blocking the wind, etc. Then the second big goal, a healthy and resilient urban forest, and that has 5 strategies. Make sure there's a mixture of ages and species. Strategy B, increase the number of young trees that live to become big trees. And this is kind of, you gotta think about it a minute, but it's really important. We can plant tons of trees, but you need to invest in them a little bit. Mainly you need to water them for the first few years, 3, 4, 5 years. You've got to protect them from string trimmers and lawnmowers, mechanical damage, so we have something in there about that. And then they need to be pruned. And there's really a major time when a tree is about 3 to 5 inches when they seem to have double leaders, and you need to prune them to a single leader, then they'll grow up strong. And so this is all about storm resiliency. Once you get them past that and they have a single leader, they tend to grow just fine. So there's something in there about pruning also when you get to the trees when they're in a small size. And I think maybe Jim is going to put something in the budget about that, because it's something that is lacking in our budget right now, is enough money to do some pruning. So I think he may be asking for that when the budget comes. It's critical. We have a lot of trees that we planted in the last 10 years, but we have a lot that are 3, 4, 5 inches that need some attention. To that end, there's some trainers coming out from the University of Minnesota on Friday, and they're going to take a small group of city crew, I think 4 to 6 people, and they're going to train them on this kind of pruning. So that should really help with the man lift, and they should be able to, they're going to do that on Friday afternoon. Next strategy, protect trees from construction damage. In other words, when there are street projects, inform the contractor, remind them not to back into the trees, etc. The next strategy is make use of limited resources, and this is all about knowing that the budget is limited, so make the best use of the money we have, and make sure that we use best practices, efficiency, etc. Make sure that the tree board and the staff is trained as new research comes out, etc. And then finally address the threats that come, like emerald ash borer, Dutch elm disease. Morris does a really good job of getting Dutch elm trees identified and out of there as fast as possible, so that we have a lot of elms still, where a lot of communities don't have any more elms, but we still do, even though Dutch elm disease has been around since the mid-70s. And then the final goal is a citizenry knowledgeable about and supportive of the urban forest. Again, 3/4 of the trees are on private property, so the more the public realizes and understands what the city is doing and why they're doing it, they're going to be more supportive, and then they'll probably plant more trees or plant a tree in their own yard, which benefits all of us, and then take care of their trees. So, and then the other idea is that this plan would be updated reviewed and updated from time to time, and especially the action items would be updated.
Thanks, Sue.
All right.
I just wanted to thank you and the rest of the members of the tree board for all of the detail that went into that information you provided. I guess as I read through it, I was just really impressed with the thoughts and the organization and just the detail that you provided. And I guess as I read through, one statistic, one benefit, if you will, that you kind of alluded to that kind of struck me, we talk about a lot about runoff, especially with our storm sewers and things. And as I read through there, you were talking about that Colorado blue spruce. It can absorb up to 1,000 gallons, just one tree. And so collectively, if you look at the city of Morris and all of the trees, we can reduce our runoff, just the trees alone, from 100 gallons as much as thousands of gallons. So that's less water, of course, that's going into our storm sewer. So that's just one thing that kind of stood out to me. But I just wanted to thank you guys personally for all your work, because I know you guys really think that through, so I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Sue. And I certainly echo Kevin's thanks. Any other questions or comments on this resolution?
I don't think so.
I'd just say that, Jim's a forester and he works with the tree board, and
Yep.
And it seems like there's a pretty good working relationship now between everybody that's working on trees, and this is one of those documents, like you said, that maybe should have been done before, but you know, the one thing that you do is you plant trees. So that's always the focus, is doing that, and this just brings kind of the documentation into the realm that it needs to be. And one of the things that we worked on is, you know, we have limited resources, but this gives us a guide for what to look for when we're doing budgeting. And actually, one of the things that we found out over the years is it also gives us kind of the impetus to go after grants and things like that, because you have a plan that's in place. We'll turn around and we'll send this in along with our Tree City USA application for recognition. We are a Tree City USA city, and that's something that we should be very proud of. But it's a very good document, and I recommend that the city council approve it.
I know, just kind of, as long as we're talking about trees, I see we're out at Eagles Ball, and I think you got that in your newsletter perhaps too, about the ballpark, Eagles Ballpark. We got flags kind of scattered around there. What types of trees are you kind of gearing or planning to put in there?
Jason, working on it.
We're gonna be going out to Wayne Westmeister, Jim and I, and we're gonna take a look and see what's available in the size caliber that they want right now. There's still being some money raised, so we're looking at, we're not quite sure how many, but it looks like it could be maybe 15 trees altogether that'll go out there in different spots. And I went out and marked about 57 possible places where I thought mature trees could be, if they got to maturity with a 30-foot canopy or something like that. And so it'll be a start, and you know, there'll be some of them that might be where there are utilities, so we won't be able to plant there. We still need locates. So this is still, we're gonna be planting in the middle of October. Various people from the Baseball Association and Jim and Marie and park board people, I've met with many people out there and got their thoughts on it. So I think we'll probably plant 6 or 7 different varieties. I don't know, a lot of people don't probably know, but that was a big kind of swampy area which was all filled in. So there's a lot of fill there. So we're gonna do a little bit of preliminary looking around to see what kind of soils are there. And as those of you who've gone out to the ballpark know, there's 3 scraggly spruce trees that are right there by the equipment where the kids play. And they've probably been there for 25, they've been there since they've been there for 40 years, I think, probably. You know, and they're about 6-inch diameter, so. There's a lot of people that are committed to watering and taking care of them from the private sector, and we'll just have to see how that works out, because, you know, the city staff is pretty stressed, you know, during this drought, and we can't expect them to really maintain them, so we have some commitments, or I should say they have some commitments from the Baseball Association and some other people, from a general group, not just one person.
Right.
Okay, so there'll be some faster growing trees, like some lindens,
Okay.
elms, which are faster growing, hackberries, which are slower growing. There's a couple of types of maples that I think we're gonna try out there. Jan Asmus has acquired a couple of Mongolian something or others that I'm doing some research on to see if they're appropriate out there at this point, so.
Okay.
So.
Well, thanks, Jay.
That's what it is.
Good to know, thank you.
And I appreciate the support that you give to the project. Thank you.
And I know, being on the park board, they've talked about trying to get some of the more mature trees, just with the foot traffic in the parks, with all the kids playing, being hard on the small trees, so hopefully have a little better chance for them if they have trees that are a little bit bigger to give them a head start to hopefully survive.
Yeah, we're looking at 3 to 4.5 inch diameter trees. The people that know about the trees planted at the Wells Park, you know, they're all alive. They're stagnant. They really haven't grown at all. I mean, they put up leaves every year, so they continue to need to be maintained. This is the problem with doing big trees. You know, you can keep them alive, but they don't exactly prosper for a while. So we're going to look for a happy medium out here. So, and try to set up some protection for some of the smaller ones. I know vandalism is always a problem. Enthusiastic children also another problem. So.
All right, we have the resolution approving an urban forest management plan. to
Oh,
address.
I can move on that resolution approving an urban forest management plan for the city of Morris.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Salvi,
Yes.
Wallers,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Phillipson,
Yes.
Mayor Dees.
Yes. We have a resolution adopting the amended 2021 city budget.
Yeah, we normally don't adjust budgets at all, but this one, we know going into the city budget year for 2021, we kind of had everything on a freeze because of COVID, and then ultimately everything kind of shook out, the way we needed it to shake out. The biggest change was the completion of the labor contracts and an increase of 2.5% in wages, and I included them in here. We also added a couple other things that we did during the year, and so I included those in there, including the city hall roof repair that we have to do prior to the solar project happening, and then the solar projects on 4 city buildings, to include the rebates that go with them. So I included that information in there, and there is one change, but I'm just gonna ask you to go ahead and approve this the way it was presented to you with the summary budget. There's probably gonna be another slight tweak to the capital outlay fund, because as I was looking at these numbers and going back and forth, the biggest thing that happened was when I talked with Jim Dittbenner, there was a misunderstanding between Jim and myself as to what was happening with the ballpark and lights. Because my understanding was they're gonna change them out to LEDs, which was a very expensive project, but for this year, what they're gonna do is they're gonna replace the bulbs that need to be replaced. So instead of 70,000, it's 5,000, about $5,000 worth of light bulbs and maybe some ballasts. And quite frankly, they could probably assume some of that just in their normal supply budget and things like that. But it is a budget, and it just guides us through the year, and I would recommend that the city council adopt the resolution as it was presented, and then I'll be working on the 2022 budget and presenting that at the next city council meeting. So I'll go back and relook these numbers a little bit. And, basically, at the end of the year, the budget is compared against the actual that we see for the year. So I would answer any questions that you might have.
And in that budget, you've got, in addition to the 70,000, so that won't be 70,000 now, it's gonna be more like 5,000.
Right.
For the lights, right? And then, is that 60,000 in the park equipment part of this revision too? Because you're proposing that as well? Is that part of this or not?
Of the park equipment.
Park, yeah, at the East Side Park, you're looking at replacing some equipment there?
No, that's actually in the budget already.
Oh,
So,
we've
so
already
every
budgeted
year
for
we
that.
budget,
Okay.
there's actually a tweak because the amount that we budgeted for, Green River Park was less than what we budgeted, and so we budgeted for the next project. Every year we'll budget money in there, and we know that that's probably gonna be 60,000, cause we'll actually commit to it. Whitney and I talked about this. We'll actually commit to it and order it this year, but we won't pay for it until next year. That's the way it winds up happening, and obviously we don't pay for the placement of the park equipment until it's actually placed, which will be in 2022. So I don't think we have to make any real big adjustment for that.
And that's usually the time when they offer big discounts.
Right, yeah, now's the time that they're looking at discounts.
Getting rid of this year's model, and they're coming out with the new,
Yep.
so that was a huge savings when we started doing that a couple of years ago.
And that worked out really well, we're looking at taking out that old playground set that came out of the elementary school
Yeah.
and then putting in a new one. And I put a little drawing in or a little
Yeah, I've seen
picture
that
in the
your newsletter, yeah.
city manager newsletter of what it's gonna be like. And I think the park board has to meet one more time on that and make sure that we understand what we wanna do.
As long as we're talking about that, specifically what equipment is all gonna get replaced there? Cause I walked over there and looked at some of that equipment, some of that is on the north end of the park, if you will, where the swing is and stuff. Are you replacing all of that, or is some of that gonna stay, or, cause some of them pieces I know are fairly new.
Well, the
you know,
new
that are
ones,
on the outside, you know, outlying edges.
yeah, well, I can tell you, based upon the discussions I've had with daycare people in the last probably month, is nothing will leave, except the old playground set.
Okay.
You know, originally, when we brought that playground set to East Side Park, the plan was to get rid of the equipment that was near Seventh Street, because it was too dangerous for kids to be playing near Seventh Street, and as soon as we put it in, the outcry was to leave it there. And the plan was, we're gonna put a nice big new playground set in on that
Okay.
northwest corner, and then get rid of the stuff near Seventh Street, and the same outcry is there. The only difference is that, I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, that Wells Park, Eastside Park, Chiswick, Eagles Park, Pomni-Terre Park, all received grant funding from the federal and state government. And the DNR was the agency that kind of facilitated that, and they came out and they inspected all of our parks. And we got a letter that indicated what they saw, and everything from, we need a sign that indicates the funding source that we got money from, but handicapped accessibility of the playground equipment was one of the things that was identified in every park.
Yeah.
And so if you look at that nice little playground set that's by the trail marker, Wadsworth Trail marker, it's 2 levels high of railroad ties, I think is what it is, or wood. And for little kids to crawl up in there or crawl back out is about as dangerous as you can get. Plus the fact that there's some P-rock in some of them, and now the go-to material is the manufactured wood fiber and stuff. So
You can
You know what?
modify that then probably to make it handicap accessible if you remove
We
the
could.
ties and things like that. Cause I
But-
guess I've talked to some daycare people too, and they expressed their concern about leaving it there also, and, their main reason is because, it's probably one of the only places in the park where there's shade.
it's shaded.
So when it gets hot, you know, the
Yep.
kids don't wanna be out in the other part where there's no shade, so they gravitate to the shaded area, and you know, the safety issue, I probably could be a concern, but like the one daycare mother, you know, provider told me, is, you know, we watch our kids. You know, we're standing right there, we're not gonna let them get out on the street, so, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah, so my recommendation is probably you don't mess with daycare providers. Because they,
Pick and choose your battles.
I mean,
Well,
well,
they're in the parks the most, though.
Right.
I mean, they're gonna know.
I mean, that's-
They bring the
Exactly right.
kids, and yeah.
but it's, you know, it's a good, at least they're communicating what they're seeing. And obviously, we have Marie, who's on the park board, and she's a daycare provider and part of the association. She winds up, you know, having people talk to her, and that's fine. You know, I think that the big thing is that we get that old playground set out
Yep.
and get the new one put in, and there'll be a recommendation coming on that probably after the next park board meeting.
And there are more trees being planted there from the Kiwanis, is that where?
Yes.
This
Yeah,
fall.
this fall.
I think at some point there's
So
gonna
in a
be
few
trees.
years, there'll be shade on that, but the shade is a big deal in a
Right.
park.
Oh, yeah.
so-
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's huge.
And there's no replacing, I see the slides are broke on that old, and that equipment's old, and I agree with replacing it, but I imagine you've probably looked into replacing those slides, and I imagine you probably can't even get new slides for it.
Liability.
No, I think they found one for the playground set out at
Chiswick.
Eagles,
Eagles, yeah.
Chiswick, which is amazing, because typically, I mean, they manufacture it for a year, maybe 2 years, and then they move on to the next thing, and so they're not, it's not like an auto parts store where you got all these pieces sitting there waiting for somebody to pick them up.
I mean, that, overall, that equipment isn't, I mean, it's not terrible bad, but of course, the slides are broke, but, you know, you'd think you could retrofit some kind of a slide to fit it, but obviously, I'm sure.
Yeah,
you
then the
checked into it.
insurance companies will
Yeah,
step in and say that you're not a official manufacturer.
right. Cool.
So that's, you know, that's my recommendation for the budget,
Okay.
and then, like I said, it's a budget, we knew we had to make an adjustment just because of the wages. We had 0% in there for wages when we came into 2021.
I will move approval of a resolution adopting an amended 2021 city budget as presented.
I will second.
Any further discussion on that resolution? We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Ellickson,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
Selby,
Yes.
Mayor Heath.
Yes. We have a resolution, resolution authorizing entering into an agreement with MnDOT Transit Operation and Capital Grant Funding for 2023.
So this is pretty interesting. So we applied for a grant through MnDOT for our transit garage to put an office on it. And actually the proposal that we made to them was originally was simply, you know, the best guess looking at square footage of building. That's the way they do it. And we talked about it a little bit internally. It's kind of an interesting process where how much money do you need? Well, we don't know. Well, take a guess. And so then you take a guess, and ours was about $500,000. And it was really based upon the building inspector looking at the square footage of, you know, what we're looking at building and what commercial rates are for square footage. Well, then we got picked up on the grant, you know, and so the next step is now do a concept design and a concept budget. And so then we hired an architect to do this for us. And they came up with the concept design and the concept budget, and it was really interesting because MnDOT said, well, you know, you spent a lot of money for that, and nobody else spends that kind of money for a concept design. And it's like, well, you're the ones that wanted it. So anyway, we met with them out at the transit garage, and it was like, okay, here it is, all right. And then they said, well, you know, this is the time, if you really think you want something, that you should put it in the grant. And it's like, well, what are you talking about? Well, you know, and so we're really led into this discussion about if you really wanted something complete, what would it look like? And so Beth does a very good job of watching out for transit. And she said, well, ideally it'd be nice to have a bay for each one of the buses that we have. Because at the time this was put together, and right now we don't have that, and it's like, well, two more bays, okay, well, just put it in your request. And so realistically, we had an architect draw up a building with this, and so then we went to them and said, if we had to add 2 more bays, what would it cost? We put that into the request and we gave it to them. They met, they looked at it, and their group said, well, this isn't gonna fly, because they asked for 500,000 and now it's $1 million, because based upon our concept design, it wound up being $700,000 after our architect. And we can't allow this, because then everybody that put in a request for funding is gonna want the flexibility to expand their funding in the grant. That's 100%. And so in the end, what they came up with was leave your current grant the way it is for 2022, apply for a second grant for 2023 for the 2 extra bays, and then ask that grant, if approved, be done at the same time that the first one is done in 2022, because they're gonna be making the decision on 2023 coming up fairly quickly, you know, for funding. And it's like, okay, well, it sounds good to me, sounds good to me, sounds good to me. And that's what we're doing here. And so we have a second grant for a transit garage, and it's for 2 bays, and all total, this is gonna be about $1 million worth of construction. It's 80% federal and state funded. So we have to come up with 20% locally, and realistically, you know, the last transit bus that we got went to 90% funded. The one before that we haven't gotten yet is 100% funded. Our electric transit bus is 100% funded because of all this money that's coming in to the transit system through the federal government with coronavirus and all that kind of stuff. So realistically, when it's all said and done, there might be another pot of money that could help pay the local share for this transit garage too. But, you know, to invest a couple $100,000 of our money into finally having a complex that meets the needs of the transit to include, you know, office space, locker room and that stuff. And actually one of the things that we've talked about over the years is the potential of maybe having a dispatch center within our garage at one point instead of dispatching the way we do. So long story short, that's what we're doing here, and I recommend that the city council authorize us to go ahead and enter. Basically what you're saying is we're willing to enter into an agreement if you give us this grant for this, and I recommend you do that.
I'm assuming there's charging stations in that, right? Because if we're gravitating to electric
That'll be
buses,
a part of the electric transit bus grant, is
Okay.
that they'll put in the fast charging
Oh, okay,
station.
so that would be on a separate
Yep.
grant, okay.
I see on the end of your information here that as part of the request that we'll be asked to allow to build it all in 2022.
Yep.
That hope, so we can do it and get it done with in one project instead of having
Yep.
to build it and then the next year doing an addition onto it, so.
That's what the
that
group,
makes sense.
that's what the group decided.
That you were talking
that-
to
that-
from the state? or
That
from-
the state group that oversees this grant funding, that's what they decided, is that we don't wanna do it as part of the first grant, we wanna do it as part of two grants put into one.
But it can be done as
It can
one
be done,
project,
yeah, 'cause
Which
we're-
anytime you do an add-on project, it seems like you always run into issues or things that have changed from when it's built to the second go
Yeah,
around. So
no,
it'd be
this
nice
is,
to get it
what's
all
gonna
done in one
happen
shot.
next is, we're gonna wind up getting a grant agreement, shortly here that will start the process. The next step, like with airports, you've been through this a little bit. The next step for us, the architect that drew up the conceptual drawing and the cost estimate cannot be the architect that builds it. If you can believe that, that's the way they do it. They cannot, so WSN has architects that would have worked on this for us, but they couldn't because they want to be the architects that build it. You know, and my biggest concern that I raise with them is what if the next architect coming in, well, now this is the design that we want built, and they can't turn around and figure out a new design. And actually, there's quite a bit of detail that comes in behind that cost estimate that we have as far as what's going into the structure. But yeah, it'll all be built at the same time.
Good.
I don't see that as being an issue.
And the 2023 grant will most likely be we'll get that as well.
Right. And
Well-
just one thing it's like with airports, I don't know if
Yeah.
you remember when I talked about this, but 2023 for them starts next fall in 2022. That's the funding cycle, because their years are not January to December. They start in what is it? October, yeah, July
I
or
think.
July,
There's three
yeah.
different ones.
So that's the weird part about it, is that they'll write that grant agreement before that 23 starts, but that same grant agreement, I mean, they figured it out. I wasn't the one that figured it out. This was all figured out by them, sitting in a room trying to figure out how do we justify giving Morris $1 million for a project that they asked for $500,000 for.
So basically, the 2023 money would be available in the fall of 2022,
Right,
if it's approved, which
yeah.
we pretty much have a verbal that everything looks good to them, just on what we've dealt with them on so far.
Right.
I will move approval of a resolution to proceed with entering into an agreement for the MnDOT Transit Operation and Capital Grant Funding for 2023.
I'll second. Good. Any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gullikson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Selby,
Yes.
Wallers.
Yes.
Mayor Heath.
Yes.
And then just one quick note, they love Morris Transit down there. They really do. When you listen to them talk about the transit system, they really love the transit system that's here and what we're doing with the money that they give us. So that's one of the big considerations.
Good. City managers' reports and recommendations. First item, Eagles Ballpark ditch cleaning.
Yeah, so you remember we had a discussion about the flooding that was happening over by College Avenue with the motel and everything, and actually the city council authorized us to do a stormwater study to try to figure out what needed to be done, and that was completed, and there was some recommendations to possibly put in some additional stormwater piping, but then the first conclusion was that maybe we needed to clean out that ditch because that ditch was in such bad shape, and Chuck DeWolf actually coordinated with MnDOT to find out about a project to clean it out, and they decided to go ahead and clean it out. So if you go out there right now, you'll see that MnDOT went in there and they cleaned out that whole ditch along that motel, along the Armory, but then that drainage ditch turns and it starts heading towards our property at the baseball field. So there's a stretch that maybe is 150 feet long that just literally, if you go out there and look, it's just clean, stop, full of vegetation. We tried to get them to do it and then just bill us for it, and they didn't want to go off there right away and do any kind of work, and so we got a quote from Jim Riley and Sons to go in there and do that additional work. It was about $3,000, and I'm recommending that we have them go in there and finish that.
And we can do that just on a motion.
I think we can do it because we have a stormwater fund. We have money in there, and we don't. It's $3,000. We don't need to go to a bid or anything like that. And I think that's the easiest. A lot of times, if we have them dig on a utility or something like that, it's just an emergency type thing. But here, I just wanted to, before I said go ahead and do it, I wanted to just get a heads up from the council that you're okay with it.
Yeah, if you don't know what this is all about, go out and drive down 28 and take a look, because it's like, why'd they stop?
Why'd they stop? It's because after that little stretch, then it drops down. That actually has a really good fall, and then the vegetation kind of falls off and is more limited to right around the drainage ditch. And then we'll see what happens, because we think that's going to make it drain a lot easier. Because they couldn't even find their one culvert because it was buried in silt. So I'm sure they're pretty surprised at how bad that ditch got filled in, and nobody realized it.
Yeah, I have not driven out there since the rain last night, so it'd be interesting to see what that looks like. But I will move approval of hiring Jim Riley and Sons to go dig out the rest of that ditch.
I will second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. City manager report.
I think maybe I'll just answer questions if you got any. The budget's coming at the next meeting, and the concrete cutters are in town doing their stuff. And but if anybody's got any questions on anything in here.
We had a police officer, I see, that resigned. Are we in the process of replacing?
Yeah, we're advertising for that position. That was a surprise to everybody, because the person's no longer a police officer. They decided to get out of the business. So it's not like we had somebody stolen by another department or the sheriff's office, which was kind of a surprise.
I see,
right.
We have a new person, looks like taking a job at the Stevens County Organic Waste Project, new Green Corps person. Happens to be sitting here.
Ooh, holding
She's got a
badge.
badge now.
Okay.
She's got a badge.
Congratulations, Sydney.
Access to a lot.
Deep into the courthouse.
Yeah, cool.
Congratulations, Sydney.
Yeah.
That's
For
cool.
you.
I have a little bit to share with you about that. I was driving the bus, so let me know when it's a correct and appropriate time. I just wasn't here on time.
Okay. Any other questions on the city manager report? Now would be a great time, Sydney.
Cool. So I'm gonna give you all a poster before I start talking.
Thank you.
Stacy, I gave you one on your desk, correct? Did you see that the other day? I didn't. Oh, you gave one, didn't they? So, hi, it's Cindy Brown. I just got hired through the county last month, through the grant that they proposed to the FDCA to help coordinate and implement the organics program. So, I'm not sure how much all you know, so I'll give a little bit of detail, but Pope Douglas Solid Waste, they have a big, beautiful organics composting facility that they're building up in Hoffman, that is closer than Alexandria, that is closer than North Dakota, which is the two places we're currently bringing all of our garbage. My job in this grant is to reach out to everybody in the community and encourage them to hop on board, because the funding for this grant is going towards Engelbretsons to help them initiate hauling. It's going towards getting carts that are going to look just like our blue recycling ones, but they're green. It's going to go towards education and signage and all this wonderful stuff, and paying me to talk to everybody about it. All of our signage is going to be from the exact same designer as the folks who did it in Alexandria. So we're going to have kind of like a regional educational basis. So if you go up to Alexandria, you'll be like, that's the same sign that we have over at City Hall or whatever. You'll recognize all the signage. And we're doing a lot of collaboration with a lot of different people, right? Because everybody's got some garbage. So this poster that I'm showing you is the organics kickoff. It's kind of what we're calling it. So Engelbretsons, Pope Douglas Solid Waste, the county, and then the Climate Network in town have all coordinated for over a month or two now, a while. We've been talking about this for a while, to invite folks to Eastside Park on October 8th to just talk and learn about the program. It's kind of an easy, chill, relaxed way to show up and say, what's going on with all this stuff? We're going to invite some friends from Pope Douglas to talk about the facility. We're going to invite some folks, restaurant owners and business owners from Pope Douglas, to talk about how their program is currently working for them. And then we're kind of inviting folks, households who are interested in organics recycling at their homes, and also folks who own businesses and restaurants, to come and sit with each other and chat and decide how they want this program to look, right? So we'll be making some community decisions. Where do we want an organics garage site to be? Let's ask all these people who are interested in it. What concerns do we have about organics programs? Let's ask all these people who probably have some concerns. And it's an information gathering event. We're pulling some Minnesotan stuff and saying, let's hope for it to be outside on October 8th, which is funny and entertaining to me. But yeah, it's a partnership. This project's, and specifically this event, we've been working on it for a while. And it's an exciting way just to let people know that organics will start happening within the year, probably here. Well, for sure within the year, actually. So if you got information about it or questions about it, this is the place to go. And I'm now not only a city employee, I'm a county employee. I'm working my way up. So
I don't,
Well,
that depends on.
We were a city employee.
You did work up. You're on the county
I'm
now.
running the state, is what I'm saying. Is why. But we have a website. I built a website on the county site, and you just Google Stevens County Organics, it'll pop up. It's got all sorts of wonderful, beautiful information on there. So basically, I just wanted to say, share away, and this is exciting work going towards our Morris Model goal of no landfilling of waste by 2025. So I thought I'd come share that with you here, and that's all. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Cindy.
Just a quick question, Friday, October 8th at 10 a.m. I mean, if you're, who you're targeting, but a working person at 10 a.m. on a Friday, and maybe that's not an issue for a lot of people,
We have thought about
but
that. We were
just-
originally going to do lunch, but then we said no restaurant owners will come out to the park at lunch.
Right.
So we're doing before lunch. And most likely on Friday, you'll be like, okay, some flexibility, as opposed to like, say, But yeah, we're hoping to at least have people RSVP, so that if they can't get there, but they're interested, that I can send them way too much information. And
It's a start, yes. We can
Great.
go from there.
Cool.
Good job, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and we added in the other business our letter of support for Stevens County Child Care.
Yeah, and I just got this afternoon, but I have sat in on 2 of those meetings, I think, looking at this, and, you know, what they're talking about doing is trying to create a project that they can put together where the county can invest some money in there. I think they're looking at using the American Rescue Plan money to build a building that they can set up pods in for daycares. It's just one part of the daycare process. Obviously, there's home daycares, and they're looking at that, but this is a very critical thing that we need to try to solve, and this is a good way to do it. And I'm recommending that the city council pass a motion allowing this letter of support to go in to the county to apply for a grant for this.
Yeah, I think that's certainly important to get the word out that they are not, the county is not just looking at building something to take away from the home daycares. It's gonna be in addition to support the home daycares and that kind of thing, because those businesses are really viable in our community.
I'll make the motion supporting the letter. That's what we're looking for, isn't it?
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
I will second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Any other information to come before the council?
Mayor, I would like to address the council and just kind of get a clarification from Lane and probably Reggie regarding bicycles and sidewalks. I had a experience while walking here about a week ago and nearly got hit by a car because I was walking down the sidewalk and bicycle person approached right down the middle of the sidewalk. I stepped off the road, off the sidewalk rather, to let the bike by, and at that same time there happened to be a vehicle coming the same way the bike was traveling. So I was trying to do the right thing, get out of the way, and maybe I should have stepped off the other way, obviously, as it turned out, but you know, I just one of those bang bang moments. And as the truck came by, he gave me the silent salute and all kinds of profanity and pointing me over, and he basically steered his truck at me, and so I nearly got hit, you know, and I'm making light of it, but you know, I survived a heart attack in Canada, for crying out loud, only to get hit by a truck walking in Morris, Minnesota. It's just, I want a clarification on who has the right of way and where are bikes supposed to be riding. I just don't think they're supposed to be riding on the sidewalks, are they?
Yeah, they're allowed on sidewalks. They're not allowed on sidewalks in the downtown area. So bicycles are allowed on sidewalks, and in a lot of cases with little kids, that's probably where you want them, is on the sidewalk and not on the road. The problem that we have in America and the problem that we have here is that people don't know how to work together on a sidewalk. You know, whether it's a person walking, a person riding a bike, or I know there's a big argument over in, I think it was Starbuck, about golf carts being on the bike path, going from the campground to, you know, the water's edge or whatever, and the bikers absolutely wanted the golf carts off the bike path. You know, and it's like, well, where are you going to put them? On the highway? They can't be on the highway. But that's the way I read it, is that they're allowed on sidewalks everywhere but the downtown area, and then you got to get off and walk your bike.
I thought they were considered a motorized vehicle, was my understanding of it.
No.
But no.
Basically.
Well, you know, it is an issue though, because, you know, I see people also walking, you know, pushing strollers, and our sidewalks aren't wide enough, quite honestly, for a bike and a person pushing a stroller, and really even for a pedestrian walking, you know, to meet on a sidewalk. It's hazardous and it's dangerous, as I found out kind of the hard way, but
But to answer your question, Kevin, on who really has the real right-of-way, it obviously would be the pedestrian, wouldn't it,
Right,
Chief?
right.
Yeah, he has the first right-of-way, so the bike owner would certainly be at fault, and the pickup obviously would be at fault if he would have hit you.
He
So,
didn't seem,
I'm
he
glad he
didn't seem
didn't.
too concerned
I'm
about
glad-
my safety at all.
Well, I'm glad he didn't.
So is the direction though make a difference? I mean,
No.
is bikes
I got the
and
license
walkers
plate, I got
supposed to be
everything.
going with the traffic on the
I
sidewalk, or
chose
it doesn't
not
matter?
to report
I
him.
mean, that's part of that.
It was just
Right.
an uncomfortable moment,
Right.
you know, and I'd like to try to be a better person, and so I stepped off, thought I was doing the right thing, but I didn't seem like I scored too many points either way. I was nearly got hit, and the person driving the truck was mad at me, and I said, well, hello, I'm just trying to go out for a walk here.
I meant it as a
Councilmember
joke, I'm
Wallace.
sorry.
Yeah. Okay, well, now I know.
Well,
but
that's,
I-
that's something that we can probably address in that safe routes to school, because, we're looking at, right now, we're doing a lot of work trying to improve sidewalks and make them more walkable and make the community more bikeable and stuff. I ride my bike on the sidewalk,
Right.
but if I'm coming near a pedestrian, then I'll slow down and I'll probably say something to them unless they're wearing headphones. Right? I'll go around them really.
You know, here's how
really
this
slow.
went down. I'm not gonna lie. The very next day, I was walking again, same stretch of sidewalk where I was walking, and kid was riding right down the bike, or right at me, and I was gonna stand my ground. I thought, darn it, I'm not gonna move this time. I'm just gonna stop him. So I stopped him, and headset on, and he rolled right up there. I thought he was gonna run me over. He stopped, and I said, well, you do know you're not supposed to be riding your bike on the sidewalk, right? And he looked at me, whatever. And he took off by me and continued on down the sidewalk. So, okay, I guess maybe I'm the one that's all wet.
What's interesting is, we've been to Germany. In Germany, everybody on a bike has to have a bell, and you ring your bell. And when you hear a bell ringing in Germany, you better move over to the side if you're a pedestrian, because they're allowed to come through. But that's a protocol they learn from the time they're little itty bitty kids on how that all works. And they're, around here, people do whatever they want.
What do you call those things you throw in the path of a vehicle? The chops and things with the sharp
Stop
points?
sticks.
Yeah,
Spikes.
that's what I need.
Stop
Carry
spikes.
some of them with me.
Just bring a little stick. with
Now,
you.
Kevin, you're going a little bit far.
No, I'm just joking. Don't print
Just
that.
determine that bikes
Don't
have
print
to,
that.
can ride the sidewalks. I never ride.
Making
the
light of it.
sidewalks. I always
Have
ride
fun.
on the
I usually ride on the street unless,
Always ride.
7th Street,
Sidewalks are
I
too
choose probably to
Yeah.
ride on the sidewalk just because of the
We
traffic.
have bad sidewalks, I can't ride on them.
I was getting an electric bike, but,
Yeah.
Okay,
Good, thank you.
Test drive
Thanks for
until we got to
listening.
university.
I'm still alive.
get one of those
good,
30,
good.
go
Keep
by
it that way,
doors.
Kevin. Informational items, we do have the city parks overview at your place. We won't discuss that, but take it home, take a look at it. Looks like a lot of information. Anything else to come before the council? Meeting adjourned. Woo.
You know, we call them ones that go back the next day for the same thing, well, like, slow in.
Yeah.
I took a picture